I'm Jim Krauss, James Krauss. I am a part of a third generation farmer. My daughter is fourth generation farmer. Her children are fifth generation community residents. My brother and I made a serious decision in 1977 to start farming. And so we took over our dad's farm. My dad was afflicted with Parkinson's disease, and from about 1970 on to his death, which was in 97, he suffered from different degrees of Parkinson's. And so when I got to be like 16, there was a lot of things that was dumped on me and my brother too. I'll have to include him in just about everything I say. Anyway, we decided that we were going to farm, so we started. We took over the farm. We bought a little bit of machinery with the aid of his capital, I guess, involvement in the farm. He had 240 acres of land that he owned. He rented a little bit, or we actually did the work on the rented land. And in 1977, we became a partnership, and fast forwarding to about 1977, we also bought we had a total acreage of 1,300 acres. And we bought this through the use of the Federal Land Bank, which was not a federal agency, but that was the name of the organization. And the interest rate at that time, farming was very positive at that time, and you could not rent any property in southeastern Baldwin County. Just wasn't. Everything was farmed, everything was rented. And so we decided that the only way we could do this was to buy our own property, so we did. The interest rate was variable rate interest only. We couldn't, as far as we knew, we could not get fixed rate interest. And it was like 7.25% interest, which is, really high compared to today. Or compared to like 2 years ago. Anyway, and then that was in 1977. We bought 800 acres of property, a total in 3 different purchases. And by the time 1983 came around, which was 5 years later, the interest rate was 17%. And that was the early 80s, and money was pretty hard to come by. And also the prices of agricultural production, soybeans, corn, oats, wheat, cattle, was relatively cheap compared to what it really should have been. And a lot of people went through a bankruptcy, and we did the same thing. We had to go through a bankruptcy because our annual payment went from about $120,000 a year to like $270,000 a year, just because of the interest rate. So there was a lot of failures. We had a reorganization bankruptcy, and we were able to come out of the restructure with 560 acres total, as opposed to the 1,300 that we had. And we got a job with there was a public corporation that had a research farm in Loxley. I won't say a name. I guess you probably would edit that anyway. Yeah. But I worked there for 26 and a half years. My brother worked there for 24 years until retirements. And we got to the point to where we are today. And the only way we can survive in today's agricultural economy, especially on South Alabama, Elberta soils, is to be totally diversified. So that's what we are. That's where we are today. When we bought the 800 acres of property, 360 of it was plantation pine. I don't know if you know what that means, but that is a tremendous amount of work. You can probably edit this out too, but just for your own reference, I got a thread that I read on Facebook. I think it was called a thread the other day that said that a private contractor was clearing some plantation pine land, and we paid, when we bought this land, we paid like $1,100 per acre. And in today's money, this private contractor was saying that he had cleared a section, I think it was like a 4-acre section of property in the Elberta Mifflin area for $30,000 an acre for clearing, just for clearing. So anyway, Richard and I cleared 360 acres of plantation pine, and we made it into farmland. And that was a 2-year venture. I mean, there was a lot of 100-hour weeks during that 2-year venture. She could testify to that. That's my wife. Get up be at the field, ready to go to work, waiting for it to get light enough to see the other end of the field so you could start your tractor work, and then working until like 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night. A lot of those days. Anyway, we farmed soybeans and corn primarily. We farmed oats as a small grain rotation with soybeans, and we farmed some wheat as a rotation with soybeans, and we had some cattle. And it was to the point where we were barely making enough. We couldn't even hardly raise a family because we lived in a 12 by 60 mobile home for almost 10 years after we got married, which was 1979. And life was really tough. And so we were working for John Deere, working for ExxonMobil, working for Dow Chemical, working for Bayer, chemical companies for agriculture. We were making profits for all those companies, but we were keeping none of it for ourselves, and getting a little bit less and a little bit less all the time. Then we went through the bankruptcy, and we decided, okay, this doesn't work. So we changed our total avenue. This was after months and months and probably a couple of years worth of thought and delving into what can we do to stay with our tradition, to stay with our heritage, and to still raise a family and make a profit. So we got, both of us worked at this offsite job, 22 miles away from here, 22-mile drive every day, 22 back, which is not too bad. There are people who drive 70, 80 miles going to work. And we decided that, okay, that was our mainstay of income at the time, along with some other contracting, the work that we did. We had a small bulldozer that we had bought to clear the property that we bought. And that bulldozer went out on some contract jobs from time to time whenever there was enough profit to justify it. So we did that. We did some different things, like we had a small landscape maintenance company that we established, and that helped out with some funds for family, raising family and stuff like that. And everything was profitable at that time. And we decided that we'd start growing small seeded grass called brown top millet. And so we started growing some brown top millet, and it turned out to be profitable most of the time. Occasionally it was near break even, but most of the time it was profitable because it's a niche market. It's not, you don't take your produce to the grain elevator. We had a seed cleaner and bagging operation at the time. And we would grow the crop, store it over the winter. It's a summer crop. Store it over the winter, and clean it, run it through the seed cleaner, and bag it, and sell it nearly retail. It would be to wholesale distributors. So we did that. The cattle situation was still pretty much not a profit situation like it is today, and sometimes it was a loss situation. But we did what's called contract grazing for large cattle owners. And made a little bit of profit that way, but it was a lot more oriented toward different things that weren't mainstream agriculture, like corn, soybeans, and cotton. We grew cotton a little bit. Cotton is a venture that only made money a couple of times in the past 25-year history, though, maybe 2 or 3-year or so periods. And the rest, you're working for the machine company, you're working for the fuel company, you're working for the ag chemical companies and the seed companies, and they're all making profits, and you're feeding your family, and that's about it. The beef shortage, and also the thought that ultra-processed food is not as good as it is convenient. It's not as healthy for us as it is convenient. Both of those affected a whole lot. We started out with keeping 5 or 6 head of our own. We have a cow-calf operation. It means you raise mama cows and they have babies, and you raise the babies to whatever your operation deems the best to sell them at, and then you sell the offspring, and you keep the mothers, and they have another crop next year, another crop of babies next year. Anyway, we started off with we've been eating our own freezer beef. We called it freezer beef at that time, for a number of years, for a long time. And we started selling just 2 or 3 or 4 to some of the local residents around here who decided that they wanted, and also our beef is primarily grass-fed. as opposed to whatever you buy at Publix or what's the name of that other Rouse's or Walmart. It's primarily grain fed mostly. It's grain finished. The calf is raised up to a certain size, and then their diet has changed from grass, which nature tells them to eat grass, and they prefer to graze. But it's if there's no grass in their pen, it's concrete floor or a dirt floor, and you give them only grain to eat, they're grain fed. So we started off with just like 3 or 4 head a year, and we went to a small processor over in Pace, Florida, and we figured that, well, there's some profit available here because we made sure that we made a profit, and it was a product that we thought was a little bit healthier for the public, and there were some people that realized that it was. It grew into this year. We started, Erin, my daughter, started selling this year's beef. She started pre-selling it about the 1st of February. In the first year, I was the guy that did this, and I didn't do such a good job at it. I can grow them and haul them to the slaughterhouse, but the rest of it leaves a lot to be desired. Anyway, she started selling this year's calf crop about the 1st of February, and we were looking at the 1st of April as the first slaughter date for the first group that would be nice and plump and grass-fed. You can't get them quite as much beef on a carcass with grass-fed as you can with grain-fed. But we'd like for them to be pretty tender and fast-growing, which they do in late spring, in late winter, early spring. So we started selling about first week of February, and she told me just yesterday, I don't know if you're going to put dates in this or not, but by the 10th of April, which is 2 months, we're pretty much sold out for the year. So 2 things. The supply of beef in this nation, and that's a whole other arena. The supply of beef in this nation is much lower than it was 50 years ago. It's a matter of fact, it's the herd size is about as the lowest it has been on record in the last 50 years, which is not a good thing because our population is quite a bit more than it was 50 years ago. And also there's a lot more people who are aware of the benefits of both buying locally and supporting local entrepreneurs, local farmers, if you want to call them farmers. And also they're aware of the health benefits for grass-fed beef and for local raised beef, as opposed to you don't really know what you're getting. They make it look really good, nice and pink, packaged well, under the little red lights in the grocery store, in the beef case. But you don't know where that came from. We used to have COE. I don't think we have it right now, which is country of origin, which means that, it could come from Brazil or Mexico or Argentina or something like that, and you wouldn't know it. But there used to be a law to where you had to identify it if you were an importer of beef. We still import beef from other countries. I don't know where they are, but there's a lot more people there that are aware of the benefits of local grown. There are a number of people in Baldwin County who sell local grown, not grass-fed necessarily, but local grown beef. There are just a few that sell grass-fed beef, but from what I understand, they're all having a sort of a run on their product the last few years, the last 2 or 3 years. It's becoming more aware. So I saw, I forget where I saw this, but it was fairly reputable data, and it was on different generations of family farmers. And they were talking about family farms, not 2,000-acre family farms. They were talking about like mine is, the size mine is. The average one where one guy established it, and maybe one of his sons took it over, so he's still a one entrepreneur, a one owner farmer, and then maybe a couple of his sons or a nephew or something like that took it over, so it branched out because of diversity and stuff like that into 2 owners. Anyway, the data goes something like this. In the last 50 years, I think it was quoting 50 years, out of 100 family farms that have been studied, and it was by some agricultural organization. I don't think it was Alpha, but it was something sort of similar to that. Alpha is American Farm Alabama Farm Federation. So it's not the insurance company, but it's Farm Federation anyway, which is associated with Farm Bureau in a certain sense. Out of 100 family farms that were studied that are more than fourth generation old, which would be at least 50 years, maybe even 60 or 70 years, out of 100 family farms, 32 made it to the second generation, 13 made it to the third generation, and 3 made it to fourth generation. That's where my daughter's at, fourth generation. And there was no data for fifth generation because there was no fifth generation farms. And I'm sure that you could probably find 1 or 2 or 3 here in this nation, but that's not good. That's what that does is it leads us down a road to, and I've told you this before, I think, it leads us down a road to agriculture being owned by giant corporations, John Deere, Dow Chemical, ExxonMobil. Those are the 3 that stick in my mind a whole lot. But you got AGCO, which is Case IH and other brands. You've got different chemical corporations like Ciba-Geigy, like Bayer, and also depending on our administrative leadership in this nation, it could be countries from Switzerland. There's a lot of chemical companies that come from Europe, Germany, Switzerland. It could be Chinese. It could be, we don't, Lord help us, who they might be, depending on president and administration. So you've got those that possibly one day, I see, my own opinion, I see agriculture being owned by people like that, people like Bill Gates, people like I saw the name of the largest property owner in, no, it wasn't Canada. I don't think it was. Maybe it was Canada. And it was an individual, a man, and evidently he's a multi-billionaire. He would have to be. Anyway, they see the handwriting on the wall. They know what's coming, just like with the profits being made from the Iran war. Tremendous profits either are being made or could have been made in the oil industry, in the fertilizer industry, in the chemical industry. Prices of all agricultural commodities, all agricultural inputs. Nitrogen fertilizer went from like $4.80 a ton. I bought nitrogen fertilizer for $4.80 a ton back in January, and it went up to almost $1,000 a ton about 2 weeks ago. Doubled in price, and we get a very small amount, a small ratio, a small proportion of our nitrogen fertilizer from the Strait of Hormuz, and that was the excuse. But it's traded on the New York Mercantile Exchange, so therefore somebody made tremendous profits. Who's paying for that? You're paying for it every time you go to the gas pump. I'm paying for it every time I go to the co-op and buy nitrogen fertilizer, and even phosphorus fertilizer went up, potassium went up, sulfur, all these inputs that don't really come from that area, they've all increased because it's complementary increases, if you want to call it that, for the cost that goes into it. Where we're headed, if we try to avert the takeover, if you want to call it a takeover, by huge, ginormous corporations, or either people who own whose net worth is up in the billions, and possibly even, like they're saying, that Elon Musk could be the world's first trillionaire. We can't conceive of how big that is. If you try to avert that and get us back to something aimed a little bit more at mom and pop, the small farm, the community that buys product from the community, like me selling my beef, and selling my 50-pound bags of brown top millet and 50-pound bags of oats and stuff like that. If you try to get it back more toward a community takes care of itself, like they take care of me, I take care of them. I supply my product, somebody else supplies milk, somebody else supplies eggs. You're going to have to make it to where the small farmer, and I know several who are trying to do this on their own without an outside job, without a secondary or a primary job, put it that way. There's not enough. Well, first of all, in Baldwin County, it's almost impossible because of the beach. because the prices of land have skyrocketed so high in the last, 15 years, 10 years, 15 years, that my daughter, my two sons are reestablished already in Auburn. They both live in Auburn, and they're not coming back. I know that. One of them's actually getting close to retirement within like maybe another 7 or 8 years, but he won't come back here because he spent the last 15 years of his life raising his family in Auburn. So that's kind of where their home was. But my daughter's not going to be able to do this because there's no way that she can pay me anywhere near what this property is worth for somebody that wants to buy it and make a subdivision out of it. And, we have far too many of them in Baldwin County as it is. This morning, I was in the town of Elberta. This is Elberta. Most people don't even know how to spell it. The little town that used to be the stepchild for the southeast portion of Baldwin County, or still is maybe. And I came out of Dakota Street, and I was sitting at Dakota Street wanting to turn left onto US 98, going to Foley. We go out to lunch. I waited on almost 100 cars. I didn't count them, but my wife and I had a discussion about this. We finally got it in the stream of traffic. Almost 100 cars before I could get on the street. This was Sunday morning at 11:40, and it's this county has just exploded without a reason. Anyway, farming has to be where a family farmer can raise a family. He's not wanting to be a millionaire when he grows old. He's wanting to be cared for. He's got to be able to supply himself with health coverage until he gets to be Medicare age, which I am, and my wife is also. I won't say that. But he's wanting to raise a family, and families these days are what, 2 kids? 4 is a little bit unusual. 5 or 6 is even almost unheard of these days. But to raise a family, to have your home, which, I guess is getting to be a little bit more unusual than it used to be, owning your own home. But just the security of knowing that you're going to still be able to be employed by your farm next year and the year after that. And so there has to be some form of surety.
Got it.
And our government is going to be the primary provider of that. And I know that they have, we have a Farm Service Agency, which provides some of us with income for certain ventures. That I think it has to be looked at in a little more broad spectrum sense, and it has to be looked in a little bit more of a diversified sense than it is today. The people that are getting the most assistance, it's not really the people that are getting the most income in the form of it's a monetary grant for following certain practices that they deem the ones that are acceptable, are the ones who are doing the large row crop farming. I guess it's Alabama Farm Service Agency. There's one called, it's NRCS, National Conservation Resource Service. I think they're kind of in the same building in Bay Minette. And I go up there maybe once a year to register my crops. And there are some people that I know, a couple of my neighbors, they are up there, maybe weekly or monthly at least. And to find out what money's available. And this needs to be broadened and possibly a little bit more local supervision. And as far as our national administration goes, there has to be more money put into this. There has to be more funding to make sure that agriculture isn't here today and gone tomorrow through price ventures like we have with price of fuel right now, price of fertilizer right now. Price of commodities are pretty low. Corn and soybeans are historically low compared to their value, compared to today's dollars. I don't know exactly what they call it, but I know that I used to grow corn years ago. And I sold corn in 1974 for $3.80 a bushel. And you kind of remember these. That's one of the high points in my corn career. But I had a couple of neighbors that by the time they paid the shipping going to a feed mill, used to go to grain elevators years ago, but now goes to different feed mills, and they make chicken feed out of it, and they make some cattle feed and other stuff like that. Corn's used in mostly cattle and pork, pigs, and chickens. By the time they paid the shipping for their corn crop in 2025, it's actually 2020. It was last year, 2025 at harvest time, they got 380, 390 a bushel for their corn. That's not right. That's not right. If you look at it in real dollars, they're probably getting like $1.50 a bushel compared to $1874. So something has to be done. Somebody with foresight and with power at the same time. Usually that doesn't go together. Power is something that comes along with being presentable. Foresight is something that comes along with somebody being wise. And anyway, somebody with foresight and somebody with power has to see that this has got to change, or the American people are going to be held hostage one day by, like today, this might be 5-year-old figures. 5 years ago, before COVID, they probably spent like 15% of their disposable income on food and fiber, which most fiber now is synthetic, so not as much as it used to be. But one day, they could be spending 50, 60, 70% of their disposable income on food, because, farmers have the one thing that people absolutely cannot live without. You can live without a boat. You can live without a pool. You can live without a house. You can live without a car. You can live without gasoline. You cannot live without food. Farmers are some of the hardest working people in the nation and some of the stupidest people in the nation, because they have the one thing that people cannot live without, and they don't use it. They're out there working. Well, the mainstream is out there working, and he's not going and attending to what can I do to take the American public for as much as I can possibly take them for. They don't do that. So, and I go and I ask when I buy seed, fuel, fertilizer, the first thing I do is I make a phone call and I say, how much? When I take my mainstream, when a farmer takes a mainstream crop, corn, soybeans, wheat, oats, canola, the first thing he does when he gets ready to sell his product is he makes a phone call and he says, how much? It doesn't go together. You can't have longevity with that.
What are some things that you would tell, I guess, residents or like neighbors, people, the average person in Baldwin County that, doesn't want to be reliant on the big box stores and all that stuff, but there is the ease of it and there's the time of it. So how do you encourage people to kind of move away from that and shop more local and support people here and get off of our reliance on that?
Okay, the what did you call them? Big box stores? Yeah. Publix, Rouse's, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Chain grocery stores. They have their place. And I don't know if you can actually change that in today's society, in today's economy, because there's an awful lot of households who are, if they're two-parent households, both parents work. There's not too many where they don't. There's getting to be a little bit more of a trend where one doesn't, but usually both do. And the one thing that people are going to have to plan for the one thing that people are going to have to do in order to effect that is to plan ahead. Like somebody coming out to buy my beef. I used to sell only quarters and halves of a slaughtered steer in the form of frozen vacuum sealed meat. My daughter Erin has started selling smaller boxes. She sells like 20-pound boxes, 30-pound boxes, and they'll fit in the average homeowner's freezer. My two sons have a small chest freezer that they have bought, and I usually make them a gift of a half a steer every year, which getting more expensive all the time. But anyway, they have one of the sons has a brother-in-law who has a larger freezer, and he usually buys a whole steer because he has a family of 5 that he's feeding, and they're 3 of them are teenagers, so they eat a lot more. Anyway, planning ahead is something that's so important. To buy from a local farm market, you're going to buy most of the time a raw product like green beans or sweet corn or, just any vegetable. There are a couple of farmers who are not really neighbors, but I know them pretty well, and they sell frozen meat. They have a freezer that they take to these local farm markets, and they sell meat, and we sell small boxes of meat, frozen meat. We do our own. My wife does a lot of canning, and we have our own vegetables, the majority of our own vegetables here, and I grow them in my garden, and we go through the trouble of processing them, and she cans them, and we store them. That's what we eat as vegetables. And we've got grandkids that will not go and eat the green beans and peas and stuff like that you buy at the store because they want grandma's stuff. Because I think it's much better. But people are going to have to plan ahead because you just don't go out there and pick it up like you can at Rouse's or Publix or Walmart. Planning is going to be a big part of it. And if people will put the social media down for a little while and make a budget and go through the process of what does it take for me to do this locally and get better quality product and still have it available when I want it, like not when I want to go and stop at DG on the way home and get some, whatever it is they buy at DG and take home for a pizza or something like that. Ultra processed has also been proven by medical experts to cause us problems with our health. And so people are going to have to change their way of thinking about mostly food, about how do I feed my kids? What am I going to give them that makes them healthier than they are? So it's going to be a big change, but it's got to start somewhere. And I don't mind this, video being a little speck of how it starts. But we've been doing that for years. My mom did it. Her mother-in-law was primarily the one that did it for her. And so we're third generation that has done this. And actually, they came from Austria-Hungary. 3 of my 4 grandparents came from Austria-Hungary when they were just teenagers. And they resettled here because of 2 things, because of the economy there, and also because of Christian persecution. That's why they came here. And there was, I guess millions of people that came here because of those 2 main things. And the economy of that, they'll find out if they do this, if they make this change and they plan ahead for something a little bit more local or maybe a lot more local in their inputs, it'll actually save them money. It won't save them time. It's going to cost them a little bit more time, a little bit more effort, but it'll be a little bit cheaper and it'll be much better quality for them too. When you came out here, which way did you come? Did you come US 98?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Have you been down County Road 32 lately? 32 and Beach Express, and then 32 and 59, or where 71 intersects 32?
No.
Is it 71? Okay, when you turn eastbound on 32 off 59, you go about a quarter of a mile, you come to a 4-way stop. Okay, that is 71. And then you come about another maybe 2 miles, and it's an intersection, maybe 1 mile, and it's the intersection of County Road 71. Okay, when you come to 73, it's the post office. It's United Bank and the post office, and there's a propane gas company there right on that. We've been there for a number of years. Okay, just to the east of that, it used to be farmland. Last year it was farmland. I'm just guessing at this. I've been by it a couple of times and I grumble every time I go by it. But there's like 100 acres there. And this is Summerdale farmland. This is some of the best, some of the deepest soil in the county. It's a little on the wet-natured side, but with a couple of drain tiles in it, it would be like Iowa. It would be really good, really productive land. You're looking at, if it had irrigation, you could be confident that you could grow 250 bushel per acre corn 8 years out of 10. Anyway, you need to go home that way, so you look at it. But it's horrid what's happening to that because the property's been sold. Used to be owned by the Engel family, and it used to be a hog farm when I was young. It's going to be one of these subdivisions where I can stand with my back up against one house, and I could, I have other expressions for it. But 15 feet away is the next house. Anyway, and the roads have all been cut in there down to a deep layer of subsoil. Red clay has been put on. Curbs are being put in, and it's all under construction. There's 80 or 100 acres there of prime Baldwin County farmland that's going to be a subdivision. Statistics has it that there are 72 active subdivisions in Baldwin County right now, meaning being developed. When you go west on County Road 32 from 59, which is only like a half a mile away from that subdivision, there's another one in prime Summerdale farmland, 80 acres worth of subdivision where all the utility conduits are sticking out of the ground. The roads are all pretty much in, and construction is going to begin there probably within just a short, weeks or so. Another 80 acres. And, it's just one after the other of these, and you can't stop it because, you stop and think about how much money that developer, won't say any names, but that developer is going to make on 80 acres. He's taking, and another thing too that you can't fight is when that 80 acre parcel was farmland, Baldwin County was collecting approximately $200 in property taxes, grandfathered in, from decades ago. $200 for the entire 80. I've got land that's the same cost in property taxes. When they get 240 houses put on there, and those houses are $300,000 per house, $400,000 per house, they're going to be collecting $4,000 or $5,000 per house times 240, which what does that come up to? That's like $1 million in taxes. You're not going to fight it unless you change all the people who are responsible for bringing this in, and the county is in favor of that. If they weren't, they wouldn't have 72 of them actively being constructed right now in the county. And this is primarily from Loxley south, the southern half of the county. If they weren't interested only in that dollar that comes out of that from taxes, change from $200 to $1 million. And all they have to do is just sit and wait, and it happens. They reassess it whenever the house, first of all, they've reassessed it whenever the property was bought for that purpose. And it gets reassessed every year. Mine does too. Only mine goes up minimally compared to something like that. But that plus, the price of the land it goes from $10,000 an acre, $15,000 an acre right now, is what mine is kind of like currently valued at. I don't know for sure, but that's what I'm guessing at. And it goes up to like $100,000 an acre, maybe $200,000 an acre for that person that's selling it to the construction site. It's amazing. We can't. How many dollars does Baldwin County collect in taxes for the whole county because of that? We don't know. I don't know if they know. I'm sure they probably do, but it's a huge problem. And the little bit that we can do is the individuals who are going to be looking at this, or you can do your little part. Buy local, buy vegetables from. Can I mention names or Kropinski's, the tourists? There are a number of producers that sell to the local public. They sell it at their home, at their farm site. They sell at farm markets, buy local stuff. My daughter used to buy an awful lot of processed food, ultra processed. They would eat out like 3 or 4 times a week for her family. This was like years ago. When she started working for me, she kind of saw what we have done. She was raised this way, but she kind of got I guess controlled by the rush, which you're talking about. And she switched over about 2 years ago, and she said, "I'm just going to go through the extra work and the extra hassle and the time it takes to make a lot of my own food." And she has done it, and her kids almost won't go out for supper on Friday night anymore because we want to eat at home, because they first of all, they like it. It's good. They can help. She got two daughters, a 10-year-old and a 13-year-old, and they can help do it. And they can see what is coming out of that oven or coming off the stovetop or coming out of the microwave even. And they just enjoy it. And it's a family event for them, and they enjoy having supper at home and having breakfast at home. So just do your little part. And that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to do my little part too. So
That's what we got. It's funny because I was just talking about some of this and you brought it up, and really hits sometimes the traffic and the overdevelopment, the growth, and you mentioned the places in Summerdale. Yeah, and it's bad. It's terrible. That's like, I do think we can find it though in our own little ways. Of course, we can't take down the big machine as individual people, but if people just cared, and this has been my whole frustration and why we started our whole show and our whole network, if people just cared more about who they were electing and got to know them and talk to them and had a conversation with the people they're probably going to vote for, instead of just going, I know that name, they had a billboard. You're screwing yourself by doing that.
Yeah, don't necessarily vote for the incumbent. It's good to change this group, whoever they may be, county commission, planning and zoning commission. County commission, you got to have somebody that's willing to put in the time. Planning and zoning commission, I served on that for about 6 years, Elberta Planning and Zoning Commission, and it got to where I could not afford the time anymore, and it's a volunteer position. But change them out, President of the United States, members of Congress. We have a little bit of an effect on that by who we vote for and by how we email them and tell them what we think they need to be doing. U.S. Congress, state House of Representatives and Senate, they need to be changed. They need to have term limits, like 2 terms, get out and let somebody else do it. We've seen the value of wisdom. We saw it most predominantly a year ago with Charlie Kirk. He didn't have a college education. He didn't major in political science or in history or, something like that. He was self-educated pretty much, and he did it. And there's a lot of young people like that. Imagine what he could do in Congress, and it's common sense. He was driven by common sense. But it's a big machine. It really is. And, we have to live in this society. We can't go to South Dakota, although I'd like to. The average population density in the western half of South Dakota is 3 people per square mile. And that includes the urban areas also. And you were talking about infrastructure, and I was talking about in Elberta waiting on I probably waited on 70 or 80 cars to pass by. It might have been 100, I don't know, but it got really boring after a while. Just waiting for my turn to pull out into that road. No traffic light, just me with a stop sign. And it's going to get worse. All these subdivisions that are being built now, they're not populated yet. The industry that's coming here, like, what is it? Novelis.
Yeah.
They're going to be supplying with 2,000 or 3,000 jobs. And the infrastructure that goes along with feeding another 2,000 or 3,000 families and supplying fuel for there's another 2,000 or 3,000 jobs there in supplying all that accessory that comes along with it. And they're just one, but you've got the new arena in Mobile is going to have like 800 full-time jobs, and all that has to be, a lot of that's going to come from Baldwin County across the Bayway. So imagine what that Bayway is going to be like in 10 years before the new bridge gets built. And all this stuff around here, these county roads are not made for it. When I was 10 years old, little story, a digression. Not really, but anyway, when I was 10 years old, my only source of income, was Coke bottle returns. Coke was all in bottles then, and I'd go out on Pecan Lane, which was dirt road. I'd ride north on County Road 95, which was only halfway to County Road 32. The rest was dirt yet at that time. And I'd ride all the way to County Road 32, and I'd ride to County Road 87, which was the 4-way stop near here. And I'd turn around and I'd go back, and I'd see maybe 1 or 2 pickup trucks. It would take me like 2 hours. That would be like my Saturday morning venture if I wasn't working on the farm. But and I'd pick up 2 or 3 Coke bottles in the ditch, and that would be 15 cents, and boy, I would have money to go to town. But that's what these most of our county infrastructure was built back then, and it was made for 20 or 30 cars per day, not 20 or 30 cars per minute. And I have to drive my farm machinery on the road. I just about saw a wreck, was almost part of a wreck, with a farm tractor pulling a fertilizer spreader about a week ago, right here on County Road 87, from people being in too big of a hurry. And when I get my combine, which is 18 feet wide from wheel to wheel, from dual wheel to dual wheel, and I drive down the road, there are places, in a lot of places on Baldwin County roads, where I have to be over that yellow line because there's not enough shoulder on the side for me to get that 60,000 pound machine into. And it's dangerous. It really is. So infrastructure is being tested to its limit now. Drive County Road 32 and so many culverts have been replaced. Well, they're just finished a resurfacing, so maybe it'll be a little bit better for a while. But infrastructure can't hold up to all that traffic and the weight and the pounding and dump trucks and, trucks hauling dirt and all that stuff. But give it another 10 years and imagine what it's going to be like then. It's going to be unfathomable. It really is. So anyway, so I might not be here by then. But anyway.
Yeah, South Dakota sounds good, right?
Yeah. If I was younger, if I was like 25 years younger, she keeps shaking her head no, but I wouldn't be if it was today and I was 25 years younger, I'd be gone already. I'd sell my property here and close my eyes to my tradition, to what I grew up with and what it was going to look like 10 years after I left. And I would go somewhere where there was less people and less need for infrastructure, and where I could, she keeps shaking her head no, but where I could function. The traditional residents of Baldwin County, and I'm one of them, my family is one of them, and actually her family is one of them too. My wife's family is one of them. They were, her dad and her grandmother were raised in Summerdale. So pretty close. She's a military brat, but that's because he joined the Marines when he got to be 18 years old, and he spent 25 or 26 years in the Marine Corps. But anyway, when I was born in 1952. In about 1963, roughly, my dad bought 40 acres of property, Gulf of Mexico frontage, right where County Road 59, and what's the beach highway? Is it 162 or 182? I forget which. Anyway, beach highway. Right where Beach Highway and 59 intersect, 40 acres of property for taxes. What does that tell you? That was worthless. Nobody wanted it. And he paid the tax on it. He bought it at the courthouse steps. I don't know how he made enough time to go to the courthouse to buy that, but he was there for other reason, I'm sure. But he bought that for taxes, and he paid the taxes on it for 2 years. And the law says that if you pay taxes on it for 3 years, you own the property. You can get a warranty deed, or I think it's a warranty deed. Anyway, the third year, the previous owner redeemed it. And what's that worth now? It's like worth $1 million a foot now and he had 40 acres there. Anyway, one little story. Another story is, do you know why Baldwin County turned into Baldwin County? I don't know if you actually know it.
Yeah.
In 1979, we got married in 1979. Well, 47 years ago. Anyway, in March of 1979. And in March of 79, Baldwin County was totally undeveloped. That was when I was clearing this 360 acres of land that I talked about. And I was working, 80 to 100 hours a week on my farming venture. And we were living in a 12 by 60 mobile home. That's all I could afford to live in at the time. Anyway, what happened September the 12th, 1979? Hurricane Frederick. And what happened about 4 days after Hurricane Frederick came over and just devastated this county? I mean, it just wiped everything out totally. News reporters were here, and they drove down. The worst devastation was not necessarily Gulf Shores, but it was like Lillian, Foley, Bon Secour, because it was the eye of the storm went up the very east coast of Mobile Bay. And this was, 135-mile-an-hour sustained winds here and everything. And we hadn't had a storm in like 30 years before that, a major hurricane. So everything was, pretty much pristine. Pine trees were really nice and huge in 30 years. Even the ones that were there before the last major hurricane were big 24-inch trees. Anyway, it was devastated. And I remember clearing fence lines and roads and stuff. It took almost 4 weeks for us to get electricity back then in 1970. News reporters came in with their cameras, and they went down. They saw the sand at Gulf Shores, and it was nationwide. Look what Hurricane Frederick did to Gulf Shores, Alabama. And a year later, the explosion started. And, people saw the sand. Nobody knew Gulf Shores was there. Nobody knew Orange Beach was there. Nobody knew Fort Morgan was there, although the Dauphin Island isn't quite as attractive as the Gulf Shores Pleasure Isle is and Pensacola Beach. And that's what exploded Baldwin County. And it exploded Mobile County. It's contingent. Mobile County, Escambia County, Florida, and Walton County, and the rest of them. They saw what was there, and now what's happening. You see, license plates from Manitoba, Canada, down here during spring break and during summer season, and so that was a day that we were so glad to get electricity back after 3.5 weeks of September weather in 1979, and we had just gotten our first air conditioner. Got our first air conditioner in my family farmhouse in 1977. So 2 years, and it was. We spent 3.5 weeks sweating and not taking a sort of a bath, but it was a sponge bath. That's a long time. Anyway, that's what exploded Baldwin County, and how many billions of dollars has been made by some people since then. It hasn't been the majority of the local residents at that time. So this is a sad day. When a lot of people spend a lot of time on games, electronic devices, games, social media, whatever it may be, put those down for a while and delve into the history of Baldwin County. It's all there. The web has it all. The internet has it all. Delve into a little bit of the history of Baldwin County, the history of the infrastructure of Baldwin County. You'll learn something. You'll learn a lot. The mileage of paved road then compared to the mileage of paved road today, the population then compared to today, average income there compared to today, and you get to the point where you learn a lot about Baldwin County agriculture. Farming there used to be almost 200,000 acres of row crops in south half of Baldwin County, from right north of Loxley to Bonsecourt to Magnolia Springs. And today there's probably, I'll bet you there's not 50,000 acres. And the rest is in houses, business, infrastructure. And, you're looking at not even as much forestry today as there was back then. So where did it all go? It's still here, but what is it under? But spend some time delving into the history of Baldwin County. And I don't mean 5 minutes. I mean, spend a couple of 100 hours. You have it. If you're on Facebook, close Facebook out and go do something else. Research it. You can find out so much about the tax base. Get a Google map, compare it to Google Maps 50 years ago, and just take a look and see what you have here. We have one of the best spots in the world to live in. We have hurricanes every few years, which is sometimes pretty devastating, but it brings us back to a little bit more to reality when that happens. A short time after that happens. We don't have what they have like in the Dakotas. They have to bury their water pipes 10 feet deep to keep them from being in the freeze zone whenever they have a severe winter. In Saskatchewan, Canada, there's a lot of family farms in Manitoba and Alberta and Saskatchewan, Canada, the breadbasket of Canada. And they have a 4-month growing period, and we have 12 months here. It's really amazing. And I can grow my beef in the wintertime, and I can grow my ground top millet and my hay and stuff like that in the summertime. But look into Baldwin County and see who made it and see what it is that you're living in. So spend some time, get away from that electronic device. If I could smash them all, but I can't do that. One of them is my office in my pocket, which has rang twice since we've been here talking. But anyway, they have their good spot, but they also have their detriment. And I said 25 years ago that Satan was the author of Facebook, which I don't know, he might be, but it's got its good points. It can keep us together when we're, vastly separated, but it also can cause us a lot of problems. It can cause our grandkids, not my kids, they're a little bit passive, but it can cause my grandkids tremendous problems in living in a social world. It's something, just put it aside for a while. And after a while, after you get over, if you're addicted to it, which a lot of us are, after you get over the addiction, if you do this, if you make a clean break with it or nearly clean break, you have to have a little bit of it. But after you get over it, you'll feel so much like you have lifted a weight off your shoulders. So I'm not a social media guy, but I still use it. So slap me or something. But anyway, delve into history, see what history holds, and see where you fit into it, and also see what you can possibly do about it. Because things can be done.